Imagine returning to your hometown after years away, only to find it transformed into a ghost town. The warm, welcoming place you once knew is now cold and lifeless. The people who once greeted you with smiles now stare with empty eyes, hiding secrets they refuse to share. This is what Ethan Carter experiences when he brings his family back to the small town where he grew up. What really happened here? Why does everyone seem so different? And most terrifying of all, why do they warn Ethan that he was never supposed to come back asterisk? As a chilling mystery unfolds, Ethan and his family are drawn into a nightmare beyond imagination. Watch until the end to uncover the dark truth behind a town that should no longer exist. After 10 years of fast-paced life in New York City, Ethan Carter finally decided it was time to return to his childhood hometown. His wife Lauren and their two children, Jack and Emma, had never been there before. For years, Ethan had told them stories about his small, peaceful town, the kind of place where neighbors knew each other by name, where kids played in the streets until dusk, and where life moved at a slow, comfortable pace. The drive was long, but filled with excitement. As they got closer, Ethan pointed out familiar landmarks. The old gas station where he bought his first candy bar, the bridge where he and his friends used to jump into the river on hot summer days. But as the miles passed, his memories felt increasingly distant, like a story he had read rather than a life he had lived. As soon as they crossed the town limits, the excitement in the car faded. Something was wrong. The streets were eerily quiet. The houses looked worn, as if time had been unkind to them. The trees lining the roads were overgrown, their twisted branches reaching like fingers toward the sky. A few people walked along the sidewalks, but instead of smiling and waving like Ethan had expected, they simply stared. Their expressions were blank, their eyes filled with something Ethan couldn't quite describe. It wasn't just curiosity, it was something darker. "Dad, where is everyone?" Jack asked, pressing his face against the window. Ethan didn't answer. Lauren shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Are you sure this is the right place?" Ethan forced a smile. "Of course. It just looks different." As they drove deeper into town, the feeling of unease grew stronger. Every house seemed abandoned, with curtains drawn and doors shut tight. It was as if the whole town had decided to turn its back on the world. Then they reached his parents' house. The once beautiful home where Ethan had spent his childhood now looked like a ghost of itself. The white picket fence was broken in places, the yard was overgrown with weeds, and the windows, always open to let in the fresh air, were shut tight. The entire house seemed to sag under an invisible weight, as if something inside was pressing outward. Ethan hesitated before stepping out of the car. A cold breeze brushed past him, and for a moment, he thought he heard something. A whisper. But when he turned, there was no one there. He knocked on the door. The sound echoed through the house, and for a long time there was no response. Then, slowly, the door creaked open. His mother stood there, but something was wrong. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow, and her expression empty. She looked at him, at Lauren, at the children, but she didn't smile. She didn't welcome him home. She simply stood there, as if she had forgotten how to react. Then his father appeared behind her, just as silent. Neither of them moved. A chill ran down Ethan's spine. This wasn't the reunion he had imagined. "Mom," he finally said, his voice hesitant. His mother blinked, as if recognizing him for the first time. Then in a voice that was too flat, she said, "Come inside." As Ethan stepped over the threshold, the air inside the house felt wrong, stagnant, heavy. The warmth of his childhood home was gone. The walls were bare, the furniture covered in dust, and the air smelled damp and stale. The once vibrant house felt abandoned. Dinner that night was unbearably quiet. His parents barely spoke. Every question Ethan asked was met with vague or unsettling answers. "How is everyone in town?" Ethan asked, hoping for something normal. His mother gave a small, strange smile. "They're still here. They never left." A cold sensation crept up his spine. The way she said it didn't feel right. Lauren glanced at him with growing unease. As Ethan ate, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Then from the corner of his eye, he saw something move outside the window. A dark figure standing in the yard watching. But when he turned to look, it was gone. That night, Ethan lay awake listening. Something was moving in the house. A whispering sound echoed down the hallway. Slowly, he got up and cracked the bedroom door open. His mother stood in the living room, staring out the window, whispering frantically to herself. Her words were too fast, too jumbled. Then from above, footsteps, slow, deliberate. His parents didn't have an attic. A sudden scream came from Emma's room. Ethan and Lauren rushed inside, finding Emma trembling. "There was someone at the window," she whispered. Ethan's blood ran cold. He turned to the glass, and there it was. A shadowy figure, standing outside, its form blurred in the moonlight. But as soon as Ethan moved, it vanished. He had seen enough. Storming into the living room, he demanded answers. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" His mother turned to him slowly, her face unreadable. Then in a voice that was too calm, she said, "You were never supposed to come back." Before Ethan could react, a scream rang out from outside. An old man stood at the gate, Mr. Sullivan, his childhood neighbor. His face was twisted in terror. "Get out of here, now, before it's too late." Then everything fell apart. The house shook. The lights flickered wildly. Doors slammed on their own. Dark figures seeped from the walls, their shadows stretching unnaturally. "Run!" Ethan shouted. Grabbing Lauren's hand, he yanked the kids toward the car. Mr. Sullivan pushed them inside. Ethan floored the gas pedal, but as soon as they reached the edge of town, an impossibly thick fog swallowed the road. No matter which way they turned, they always ended up back at his parents' house. The figures had followed them, tall black silhouettes with glowing red eyes. The whispers grew louder. Lauren gripped Ethan's arm, her voice shaking. "They won't let us leave." Desperate, she started praying. The fog began to thin, the figures dissolved. And suddenly, they were out. The morning sun glowed as they found themselves on a deserted highway, far from town, with no idea how they escaped. Ethan pulled over, breathing hard. He turned back toward the town and saw nothing. The houses, the streets, the people, all gone. Just an endless forest stretching for miles. Silence filled the car. No one spoke. No one dared to. Ethan started the engine and drove away, gripping the wheels so tightly his knuckles turned white. They didn't look back. They couldn't. But just as the town disappeared behind them, a voice whispered through the wind, soft, almost tender. "You were never supposed to come back."